For the last 25 years, there's been a very concerted effort on the part of radical Islamists to infiltrate our major institutions in America. They've done that by funding professors' projects in our colleges and universities, and then they influence over a period of time what's taught by making the program dependent on their yearly donations. And a former professor who was receiving this money and doing this, who is now working on the other side, actually explained it all to me in detail of how it works. Several of the classes have graduated, and we're talking over the last 20 years, literally. And so now those graduates are out into our system. You know, they're teaching in our schools, they are in our military, they are in various branches of our government, in the State Department, and they are advising people in the State Department of how they should be talking, what kind of language they should use, and who they can meet with, who we bring over for visits, and who goes over to other countries, that type of thing. Another very large concern that's looming on the horizon is what's happening in our financial world. First, because the financial system is in a bit of a challenge with dollars and having capital, they're looking wherever they can to get that. And there's a growing tendency in our country for banks, and I'm talking about major banks, to succumb to Sharia banking agreements. Now, that may not sound like anything strange to you, and technically it is above board. But what it amounts to is they are Sharia governed then. And there's a board of about 20 men worldwide that are serving on the boards that govern these banks and actually making sure these programs are implemented. And the reason the banks are interested is because they're getting huge fees. Second, there's a large amount of investment by sovereign wealth funds. Are any of you familiar with the sovereign wealth fund? Well, it's simply this. It's investment by a foreign government. And most of these are foreign governments that are not democratic. You know, the Dubais of the world, some in China, the Saudi Arabias, that type of thing. They're foreign investments that are coming into our banks and our Wall Street firms. Now, I have no problem with private individuals investing in this country. I have absolutely no problem with groups or businesses investing in this country. I mean, we've been doing that forever. They've been doing it. We've been doing it in their countries. That's perfectly fine. But these sovereign wealth funds are controlled by people generally who do not like us, and in many cases are working against us. And what happened back starting in, I think, November with Citigroup was investment to help stabilize them. And now the investments have been made in Citigroup, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, NASDAQ. There's a lot longer list than that. But quite frankly, what my concern is, we don't know where this is going to lead, because we don't know whether they're going to ask for seats on the boards of directors. If they put the money in to stabilize us, they can destabilize us just as quickly. And what they're doing is investing just under the amount of money that we have a program for. It's called, in the Treasury Department, there's a group called CFIUS, one of those government acronyms. And they look at the foreign investment into American businesses to see whether or not it's good for our country. And my concern is this. You know, they tried to buy the port system some time ago. Dubai did, and we said no. That message got through loud and clear, so they backed off. The president backed off. They tried to buy 3Com, which is an intelligence technology company that was selling to our military. And we stood up and said no, and CFIUS turned that one down. The latest is their sovereign wealth fund money in the CSX takeover, hostile takeover that's happening. And nobody knows how much. We don't have any idea how much sovereign wealth money there is. But CSX is a railroad that does all of our sensitive military shipping and our nuclear waste shipping. These are critical infrastructures in our country, and they should not be owned by foreign governments that do not like us and intend to do us harm in most cases. But nobody wants to talk about that because people make money on this. But I've been sitting and watching it now for a long time, and it's just one after the other. And when you put it together, I think it's reason for us to be concerned. I think we need to cut through the veil of political correctness that's overtaking this country. We need transparency with sovereign wealth funds is one part of that. We need to be able to say what we want to say and not have to do as our government is telling us that we can only use certain words and phrases when we talk about this. But again, as part of all this, I decided to come up with an action agenda. What can we do? So we put together, my staff and I put together a Wake Up America agenda of 10 points of things that I thought were logical, realistic, that we could actually take action on and maybe make something happen. And so it literally is seeking to expose part of what I consider the radical Islamist agenda. It's in the introductory stages. Various parts of it are in various stages, and we're trying to figure out the best way to accomplish all the goals. But one of the things we're doing is seeking an investigation of the chaplain programs in the military and the prison system that were set up by Al-Moody, the man I mentioned earlier, who's in prison for 23 years for financing terrorism. I'm looking into a hiring process at the FBI. I happen to know a couple of people who are very fluent Arabic-speaking people, American citizens, who have applied for jobs and get turned down. And I am told this happens over and over and over again. But yet they set up booths at the ISNA and CARE conferences to recruit translators in the FBI, not knowing who they're going to get. And that concerns me a lot because I was told by people within the FBI that when 9/11 happened, the translation section is set apart and it's very hard to get into, that there were cheers that went up inside that section on 9/11. That's been documented by people inside. So we need to look at this and find out who is doing our translation, because what do they leave out? What do they change? We don't know. They're backlogged like crazy because they aren't hiring people. A lot of the intelligence we have that should have been used by now and would have been helpful in a lot of cases is sitting, waiting to be translated. One of the points in this 10-point plan calls for the Saudi textbooks that preach violence against non-Muslims to be reformed so they do not indoctrinate Saudi youth or American youth at institutions here in the United States with what I consider to be vile, hateful language. And until we put an end to the Wahhabi influence here in this country, and the Wahhabis are a very radical sect from Saudi Arabia that's, well, bin Laden's a part of that, but it's also responsible for building most of the mosques here in this country are being built with Wahhabi money. And I think if we don't look at this seriously to try and put an end to a lot of what they're doing, how are we going to be able to stop the root causes of fighting this scourge in the world? These are just a few of the samples of what we're doing on the 10-point agenda, but we do have a website like every other congressperson. It's myrick.house.gov, and we have a section there called Wake Up America Agenda, so if you have any interest in finding out more about what the rest of them are, it's on the website. And with that, I'm going to close, and if we have time, I'd love to take questions.